Hello, and welcome to Dataminr's Knowledge Academy series on rethinking risk. My name is Homayun Yaqub, and I am the head of our corporate solutions and advisory practice here at Dataminr. Topic today is an area that's gaining increasing resonance within various industries and organizations around the idea of convergent security and developing converged security models. The subtitle, as you can see here, is Managing Risk in a Hyperconnected Environment. And so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about this whole notion of hyperconnectivity. What does it mean? And why does it serve as an action-forcing event or catalyst to support the idea for developing a more converged security approach in how you manage risk within your environments? To be sure, when we think about hyperconnectivity, what are those driving forces? Certainly, your organizations are well underway at varying degrees of accelerated path of aggressiveness around your efforts to digitally transform your organizations. The new normal, which we've heard a lot in terms of a phrase over this period of the enduring pandemic, has now become, of course, the institutionalized reality. We were forced to place many workers in a work from home, or quite literally a work from anywhere environment. This forced a significant change in how organizations do business with respect to how their employees and members of their organization were accessing critical and sensitive intellectual property and data, how they were working, how they were exchanging, interacting, and collaborating. Gone was this idea that we had a neatly protected and traditional office environment where we managed both the network as well as the people within. Risk has now proliferated. Because an individual can work from anywhere, because an individual can access data and access an organization's sensitive intellectual property from anywhere, be it through the cloud, be it through virtual private networks, be it through web-based applications, whatever the case may be, and employees are in fact quite literally working from anywhere. This interaction between people and data, and now increasingly the Internet of Things, IoT, has created a very different attack surface. Risk now is no longer contained, as I mentioned and alluded to before, the idea of within a traditional environment. Risk is now potentially everywhere. And so as we think about risk and we think about how risk is understood, those classic definitions and how organizations are perhaps aligned, may require some level of challenge and some level of reconsideration. To that end, let's examine some of those traditional silos. We're certainly well versed in the idea of having a chief information security officer who is responsible for, as the title suggests, information security, data security, but broader cybersecurity readiness or the overall cybersecurity posture of the organization. The chief security officer, of course, is responsible for what is known historically as the classic guns, gates, and guards of the organization: physical security, their branch locations, corporate offices, access control, etc. Now, when we thought about these roles, when we thought about them traditionally, we're not suggesting that these roles are no longer necessary. Very much, they're still, of course, in need and certainly in high demand. But because of hyperconnectivity, when we continue to place these functions and their corresponding teams within those traditional silos, we're not actually paying better attention to the idea that we live in a very hyperconnected environment and that attack surface is in fact quite different than what it historically has been. The impact, therefore, is certainly on an organization's ability to respond, often slowing it because of those silos, creating an impact to their operational efficiency, given the fact that we have this more integrated model, and of course the cost impact. Cost could happen in a variety of different ways. Certainly, do we have redundancies that we otherwise don't need? Do we have perhaps accelerated paths towards a disruption to the business, therefore impacting our resiliency, which also then potentially have an impact? And so as we think about these, is there potentially a better way? Well, certainly we've talked about converged security. So what are those steps? What are some of those steps that we can take? The first, I think, is to adopt a more thoughtful approach towards how organizations manage their risk environment. An enterprise risk management approach is less of a line action item approach towards addressing, but more of a methodological framework. Many organizations have adopted ERM as a way of doing business. And many of them have also aligned that under the assignment or designation of a chief risk officer. We see, as I alluded to before, financial services and some other sectors as well, to include government, adopting the idea of a chief risk officer. And with that, what they're acknowledging is the significance of risk, elevating it to the executive or C-suite level, but also acknowledging that we need to take a more thoughtful and holistic approach towards managing risk. It also means unifying the roles of the Chief Information Security Officer and the CSO, or the Chief Security Officer, under that Chief Risk Officer, so that we have that holistic and integrated approach. We're not suggesting that these become the same person or the same teams, but simply the fact that because each of those obviously have different pedigrees and different skills that we want, that are clearly in high demand, but we want a more unified approach. And that more unified approach begins with taking a joint and fully collaborative and fully integrated approach towards conducting a business impact analysis, both with respect to its impact on the cybersecurity posture, as well as the physical security posture. And you will find, surprisingly, as many organizations have completed this, remarkable overlap in the areas of concern. And with that analysis and that understanding that there is in fact that overlap, we should then take some further steps towards how we operationalize a more converged security model by streamlining in a couple key areas. One is, of course, challenging the idea of having a separate physical security operations center and also a cybersecurity operations center. We see in some industries and some larger organizations the movement towards a fusion center. We have seen government and the public sector as well move towards this end of building fusion centers. And this approach allows for either the literal side-by-side teaming of analysts from both the cyber and information security, or InfoSec, and physical security sides coming together, but also acknowledging their role in being more collaborative in how they do business. This cross-functional approach also means that we need to put a spotlight on adopting those types of technologies that are better integrated to support a fusion center model, as well as to be able to serve multiple use cases that address the variety of areas around security and risk management, or broader enterprise risk management. To that end, key fundamentals as we think about some of those foundational technologies are ones that address the discovery of information, i.e. creating that right level of situational awareness. Risk is wholly dependent on being aware of the fact that there is something that contributes to your risk environment. And then ultimately, once that awareness or discovery occurs, how best do we manage the incidents by developing a thoughtful, structured, and consistent approach towards incident management. Sometimes incidents may be isolated in nature. Sometimes they may actually be enduring and therefore evolve into a crisis that now involves a variety of other stakeholders within the organization. And so as we think about those technologies, certainly a starting point, we've talked about a little bit about governance as well, but ultimately what we're here to sort of close out with is this idea that converged security really is a more thoughtful approach that achieves greater degrees of operational efficiency, challenges those traditional silos, and ultimately achieves to impacting and improving resiliency within an organization as we ultimately seek to minimize any disruptions to our business and to our core activities. And so I wanted to thank you for your time in joining us today, and I hope some of the comments were useful within our Knowledge Academy series, and particularly today around the converged security topic. And I look forward to hearing from you. Again, my name is Homayun Yaqub, and I wish you a good day. Thank you.